You believe strength keeps you safe until darkness teaches you how fragile hearts truly are. You think loneliness ends when power arrives until silence sits beside your throne. You never expect love to save a monster until a trembling hand reaches toward your shadows. The Vampire King stood alone beneath cathedral windows filled with fractured moonlight. His long black coat brushed against cold marble like a whisper of regret. Centuries of rule had carved discipline into his posture, yet emptied his expression. Every subject feared him, yet none truly knew the wound behind his eyes. The kingdom of Nocturnes slept beneath layers of curling fog and flickering lantern light. Ancient laws ruled all immortals with strict boundaries of emotion and devotion. Vampires could protect humans, yet never love without risking soul fracture. Any bond deeper than duty slowly drained immortal strength and sanity. The king obeyed these laws once with unquestioned loyalty and cold restraint. He silenced desire beneath obedience until longing hardened inside his chest. Human faces passed through palace halls yet never stirred more than distant interest. He allowed servants around him but kept genuine closeness far away. Then she arrived during winter rain with trembling hands and frightened eyes. The humans called her Alara, a traveling healer of forgotten border villages. Guards nearly turned her away until the king noticed her struggling form. She collapsed on the palace steps, whispered words no one else understood. The king sensed unusual warmth within her racing, fragile heartbeat. It felt like sunlight hidden beneath layers of broken flesh. Every instinct warned him she carried danger and unanswered fate. Still, he stepped forward and ordered her brought inside silently. The healers examined her yet found no sickness or visible curse. Only exhaustion born from months of relentless travel and hidden emotional pain. She awoke beneath woven blankets, surprised by towering shadow watching protectively. His glowing eyes frightened her, yet his stillness offered strange comfort. Alara whispered gratitude with shaking breath and uncertain nervous courage. The king answered quietly, promising no harm would follow her arrival. Their conversation felt gentle like early snowfall settling on burnt ground. For the first time, he allowed true softness enter his measured voice. She stayed within palace walls as guest under quiet royal protection. Each day she wandered halls studying ancient murals and carved stone vampires. Each night she shared tea with the king beneath moon-stained glass. They spoke of fear and loneliness and surviving wounds without surrender. The king told stories of leadership without revealing his crown of obligation. Alara spoke of loss and abandonment in forgotten villages near battlefield ruins. Their voices met in fragile harmony, neither recognized as approaching attachment. Yet unseen laws stirred warnings through the cold veins of the monarch. His strength began subtly weakening after every conversation filled with emotion. He dismissed symptoms as fatigue, ignoring ancient prophecy in dusty scrolls. The scrolls warned love pulls immortals toward mortality and eventual destruction. No vampire king had defied this truth and lived to rule again. Outside the palace, wardens observed growing changes in their sovereign demeanor. They saw lingering gazes and protective steps following the fragile healer. Forced obedience demanded intervention to preserve leadership balance. Yet fear of the king prevented open confrontation for now. Alara sensed tension growing around her presence within throne chambers. She apologized, believing herself a burden to royal order. The king denied her doubts and offered unwavering quiet reassurance. He confided darker secrets of his emotional isolation at last. Alara listened without judgment or retreat, offering simple human compassion. Her kindness pressed against his guarded heart like persistent gentle rain. Centuries of emotional frost slowly cracked beneath vulnerable conversation. For the first time, he wondered whether protecting love could outweigh losing power. Late one night moon fog rolled across the tower balconies. The king stood watching distant borders where monsters stirred restlessly. Ilara joined him wrapped in borrowed cloak, offering fragile warmth. Their hands nearly touched while silence swelled heavy between breaths. The king withdrew, suddenly remembering the ancient laws binding his soul. Veer crossed his features like a passing storm shadow. He warned her unknowingly that closeness between them carried terrible consequences. She looked confused, yet accepted his distance with unspoken sadness. Unknown to both, secret watchers reported their growing emotional entanglement. The Nocturne Council summoned enforcement ritual to intervene before damage spread. Shadow Knights prepared weapons blessed against immortal hearts and forbidden bonds. The stage quietly set for violent collision between love and destiny. That night, Allura dreamed of burning wings and shattered crowns beneath falling ash. She woke with tears, unsure why despair haunted her peaceful chamber. The air itself felt charged with foreboding silence and hidden footsteps. Outside, distant horns echoed, signaling council mobilization across the valley. The Vampire King felt sudden cold stab his immortal chest. An ancestral warning pulsed within his veins like breaking thunder. He raced toward Alara's chamber, driven by rising protective terror. Too late, he sensed approaching danger, slipping through palace shadows. The Vampire King moved, like wind through shadowed hallways, toward Alara's chamber. Each step thundered with urgency beneath vaulted ceilings glittering with cold starlight. His instincts screamed louder than ancient laws anchored deep in his soul. Danger coiled closer, with every fading heartbeat echoing in the stone. Outside the palace gates, shadow knights assembled beneath fluttering black banners. Their armor shimmered with holy sigils carved to sever forbidden emotional bonds. They carried obsidian blades forged for execution of immortal lawbreakers. The council demanded swift obedience to preserve balance and public peace. Inside the palace, Alara paced beside her candle lit bed, unable to settle. The weight of unseen tension pressed heavily against her fragile ribcage. She sensed the king drawing near, yet something colder lurked behind him. Her breath fogged as dread traced invisible lines up her spine. The Vampire King burst through her chamber doors with protective resolve. He commanded her to hide without explanation or comforting reassurance. Confusion filled her expression, yet she obeyed, trusting his urgency. Hidden behind velvet drapery, she listened as armor clanked closer. The Shadow Knights entered in strict formation, eyes empty of mercy. They announced the council's accusation of emotional law violation. The king stood between them, armed only with sovereign authority and will. He denied wrongdoing, yet refused to surrender Alara to interrogation. Their commander stepped forward, invoking ancient decree of soul fracture testing. Any human suspect near the monarch must be seized for right evaluation. Failure meant permanent severance punishment for both involved parties. The king heard the words like a death bell ringing across eternity. He lunged at the nearest knight, moving faster than mortal sight. Steel cracked beneath supernatural strength, scattering sparks across polished marble. The hallway erupted with echoes of battle and shouted ritual commands. Yet the knights remained relentless, backed by sanctified enchantments. Alara watched, trembling, as silhouettes clashed beyond the drapery folds. Her heart raced with terror and desperate instinct to protect him somehow. She emerged, screaming for the violence to stop at once. The sight of her triggered immediate invocation of capture procedure. A restraints glyph ignited beneath her feet, freezing her movement mid-step. Cold glowing chains wrapped her wrists, drawing bloodless pressure against skin. The king roared in rage and smashed through 3 knights instantly. But holy light burst around him, draining supernatural force violently. He collapsed to one knee, struggling against weakening power surge. Memories of prophecies resurfaced, warning love would drain royalty strength. Alara cried, begging them to release the king rather than punish him. Her courage pierced the commander's hesitation only briefly. The ritual soldiers tightened their circle, reciting soul separation incantations. His energy tore between Alara's heartbeat and the king's waning immortality. He felt pieces of his essence unravel thread by agonizing thread. Pain tore through centuries of emotional suppression, now violently unleashed. The king reached for Alara, defying enchantment restraints binding his limbs. Their fingertips brushed igniting shockwaves of radiant forbidden energy. The chamber lights exploded, plunging all into suffocating smoky darkness. All sound vanished except shared ragged breathing. In that suspended silence, a hidden power stirred inside Alara's core. Unknown answers awakened deep beneath her fragile human exterior. Golden light seeped from her chest, colliding with sigil chains instantly. The glyph shattered, releasing her movement in blinding brilliance. Everyone froze, feeling a surge of ancient forgotten magic. The king stared, realizing prophecies never mentioned such energy awakening. The knights staggered, retreating as their blessed armor dulled lifelessly. Fear replaced discipline within hardened execution eyes. Alara clutched her chest, terrified by the force she unleashed. She had never known power or anything beyond healing empathy. Questions trembled across her tear-streaked face, seeking reassurance. The weakened king stood slowly, drawn to her glowing presence. Before answers arrived, the commander regained control, threatened containment protocols. More knights rushed through stairwells, carrying reinforced binding relics. The king grasped Alara's hand, whispering they must escape immediately. As she nodded, though fear tremored through her legs. Together they fled toward ancient catacombs beneath the palace foundations. Stones shifted, creating narrow passageways hidden from ritual tracking. Behind them, alarms rang, summoning entire nocturne security battalions. The forbidden lovers descended into labyrinth shadows, racing against fate. Downward they ran, clutching fragile hope as torches flared behind. Both sensed destiny tightening around them like unseen tightening chains. Trust bound them deeper, even while danger multiplied mercilessly. Neither imagined escape would come without impossible sacrifice. Ahead, the catacomb tunnels swallowed the pair in twisting ancient stone passageways. Water dripped steadily from cracked ceilings, forming echoing rhythmic warnings. Their breaths became clouds in the freezing subterranean air. The king guided Alara through labyrinth turns memorized from forgotten wars. Behind them, distant boots thundered, growing closer with relentless precision. Ritual tracking beasts howled, releasing vibrating frequencies through reinforced relic collars. Each echo threatened to expose their hiding roots instantly. The king adjusted direction, sensing magical interference across the stone. Alara clutched his hand, gaining strength in the contact glow lingering between them. Her unexplained energy pulsed faintly beneath her brittle, calm exterior. She feared harming him again, yet could not halt internal awakening. The king reassured her, promising no power within her was a mistake. They reached an ancient chamber carved with murals depicting celestial vampires. The walls showed immortal guardians bonded with luminous human vessels. The king realized forgotten history contradicted council propaganda entirely. Humans were once chosen amplifiers for vampire strength, not weakness. A hidden inscription described the soul union rite lost long before modern laws. It allowed love to magnify immortality through balanced emotional connection. The ritual required mutual devotion, not domination or enforced obedience. Its suppression ensured the council maintained solitary political control. The king understood why emotional laws persisted across enforced generations. Bonded vampires became stronger rulers immune to council manipulation. Love threatened to collapse centralized authority structures brutally. Allura was not accidental arrival, but destined catalyst of awakening rebellion. Before revelation could fully settle, shadow knights burst into adjacent halls. Rock debris shattered as pursuit narrowed with terrifying inevitability. The pair fled through side arches while echoes magnified threat. Alara stumbled, nearly collapsing from spreading energy surges within her chest. The king lifted her effortlessly, carrying protective urgency through narrowing tunnels. His power drained further, yet determination fueled supernatural endurance. Finally, they reached a sealed door marked with forgotten sigils. The king tore it open, revealing hidden sanctum beyond centuries sealed. Inside waited ancient watchers preserved between life and death. Stone-bound vampire elders slumbered wrapped in silver rune chains. They opened glowing eyes, sensing forbidden bond arrival instantly. Their voices echoed directly into mind spaces like distant thunder. They proclaimed Alara bearer of lumen blood, ancient human lineage. Only such hearts could anchor vampire emotional amplification safely. The king was destined royal counterpart written within sealed prophecy. Their meeting engineered by fate and suppressed history. Alara trembled, struggling to accept lineage revelation. She had lived believing herself ordinary healer without inherited power. The elders explained her compassion activated dormant lineage abilities. Only kindness could awaken soul light dormant within humans. Outside knights breached sanctum, causing elders to accelerate instruction. They guided the king through preparatory union breath alignment exercises. Connection demanded vulnerability deeper than any mortal intimacy. Both participants must accept emotional truth without masked fear. The king admitted centuries of loneliness and terror of emotional weakness. Alara confessed fear of abandonment and causing those she loved harm. Their confessions intertwined, forming unseen luminous bonding currents. The elders felt the first ritual sparks igniting chamber air. Before completion, shockwaves hit the sanctum door violently. Enchantment shields cracked as knights hurled binding devices inward. The elders commanded immediate partial union to stabilize their spirits. Full ritual demanded moon alignment that remained hours away. The king and Alara clasped hands, pressing foreheads together. They exchanged whispered devotion promises, eclipsing rational doubt. Radiant energy swirled, partially sealing emotional circuit between them. The king regained slight strength while Alara's burning chaos steadied. Yet incomplete bonding left them vulnerable to forced ritual interference. The elders warned enemies sought to corrupt union into soul weaponization. Captured bonded pairs were twisted into obedience conduits historically. Escape alone could not secure their destinies now. The sanctum shattered under final night assault. Smoke-filled passages as elders sealed themselves behind falling stone barriers. They shouted final instructions toward remote lunar altar beyond forest peaks. Only complete ritual there could fulfill bonding wards and survival protection. The king escaped carrying Alara through crumbling tunnels toward moonlight glimpses. Behind them, knights regrouped preparing mass pursuit with siege relic transport. The couple emerged into frozen valleys under massive twin moons rising. Destiny now demanded completion of unthinkable emotional ritual publicly, defying the council. The frozen valley stretched endlessly beneath silver moonlight and sweeping fog banks. The vampire king ran carrying Alara, whose breath fluttered with lingering exhaustion. Partial unions stabilized her heart, yet energy still flickered beneath her skin. Behind them, horns sounded summoning an entire battalion of shadow riders. The tundra winds howled freezing tears along Alara's pale cheeks. She urged the king to set her down despite weakening protective strength. They continued on foot across jagged ridges toward forest silhouettes ahead. Branches trembled under encroaching storm clouds reflecting council tracking beacons. The king sensed magical scanners sweeping terrain searching emotional resonance trails. Their incomplete bond radiated detectable harmonic pulses through the air. Remaining unseen grew increasingly impossible with each hurried step. They risked discovery but dared not slow their advance. Entering the ancient blackpine forest, they found shifting illusions sheltering the path. Forgotten enchantments distorted sight, confusing horseback pursuit forces repeatedly. They pressed deeper until moonlight broke through clearing above basalt cliffs. At its heart stood the lunar altar carved into obsidian stone. Symbols glowed, faintly awaiting activation by dual-bonded souls. The elders described this place as Convergence Cradle beyond council jurisdiction. The king and Alara approached, reverently feeling ancestral echoes awaken beneath feet. Fear and hope wrestled visibly across their expressions simultaneously. Before the ritual began, distant horns sounded from multiple forest directions. Shadow riders emerged, encircling the clearing with formation discipline. Their commander dismounted bearing sanctioned scripture permit of lawful arrest. The council demanded surrender to prevent collapse of immortal authority. The king stood firm, shielding Alara with unwavering sovereign posture. He declared ancient laws fraudulent, built through political fear, not necessity. The commander retorted that emotional power endangered immortal governance stability. Neither side yielded as tension thickened beneath the pale moons. Arrow launchers primed, triggering reflective shields around the altar perimeter. The king initiated defensive stance, though exhaustion limited his strength output. Alara felt inner power swell, responding to protective instinct violently. She feared losing control, yet resolved to stand beside him unwaveringly. They stepped onto the altar, locking hands as ritual light surged alive. Symbols ignited, swirling upward, forming luminous spirals around their bodies. The incomplete union strained painfully as bonding demanded total emotional vulnerability. Memories flooded them, forcing relived wounds at accelerated intensity. The king experienced centuries of solitude, betrayal, and hollow triumph. Alara felt childhood abandonment, endless service without recognition of worth. Their hearts synchronized through shared longing, dissolving isolation barriers. Energy intensified, glowing blindingly across the shadowed forest clearing. Angered knights opened fire using anti-bonding shock spears. Bolts struck ritual field, causing destabilizing resonance backlash waves. Both cried out as spiritual feedback scorched their intertwined souls. They fought through agony to complete relational vows against collapse. The commander advanced, personally wielding Severance blade raised toward Alara. The king intercepted absorbing piercing strike that tore into immortal flesh. His blood illuminated silver dripping across glowing obsidian stone. The sight triggered explosive response in Alara's dormant lineage core. A radiant wave erupted outward, repelling attackers through shock force impact. Trees bent under pressure while knights crashed against forest rock embankments. For the first time, Alara's eyes shone like living sunrise light. She screamed, begging the king to remain conscious beside her. He collapsed, breathing shallow expression, warm yet fading visibly. Ritual remained unfinished without conscious emotional exchange closure. She embraced him, whispering devotion, anchoring remaining energy into union sequence. Their bond strengthened, drawing him back from threshold reluctantly. The commander regrouped, ordering containment cages to capture both alive. Airships descended, lowering crystal chains into the clearing rapidly. The king rose, placing himself between chains and Alara again. Their unequal footing revealed grim odds looming without reinforcement arrival. At that moment, unfamiliar figures emerged from shadowed forest edges quietly. Robed vampires bearing elder sigils stepped between clearing and battalion. They revealed themselves as hidden bonded clans surviving secret persecution. The prophecy had summoned their allegiance to protect activation ceremonies. Their arrival shattered balance, instantly turning the standoff volatile. Escape opportunity opened, yet ritual remained dangerously incomplete. The Elder's choice loomed heavy, requiring finishing bond amid open combat. The king and Alara, locked eyes, understanding sacrifice demanded now without hesitation. They stepped back onto the blazing altar, committing to full emotional surrender. Battle erupted viciously around them as moonlight refracted across flying steel. Their completed union began accelerating beyond containment potential limits. Fate veered sharply toward irreversible confrontation, with the Council's final forced lunar altar blazed like a newborn star beneath storm-darkened skies. The king and Alara stood motionless as bonding energy flooded their bodies. Their hands locked while emotional resonance stabilized their trembling spirits. The final union verse demanded total vulnerability beyond physical endurance. Around them, combat roared between hidden clans and council battalions. Crystal chains shattered beneath elder sigil attacks, scattering luminous fragments. Airships burned as bonded vampire lances pierced stabilizing engines. Yet the commander pushed forward, backed by forbidden relic battalions. The king felt strength rushing back, amplified by shared heartbeat synchronization. Alara felt clarity guiding her surging power into focused protection waves. Together they formed radiant shields, deflecting incoming shock spears easily. For the first time, the monarch fought not alone but fused. The commander deployed resonant suppressors designed to collapse emotional circuits. Black anchors fired, embedding into the altar stone, vibrating violently. Their impact disrupted ritual alignment, causing energy backlash concussion. The bond flickered, unstable, threatening catastrophic spiritual rupture. Alara dropped to one knee, pain blazing through her nervous system. The king knelt beside her, refusing to reconnect defensive stance. His enemy advance tightened within meters of the trembling altar platform. The commander raised Severance Blade, preparing a decisive lethal strike. In that suspended terror, Alara embraced fearless emotional release fully. She extended her compassion outward, abandoning restrained energy containment. Her voice resonated across the clearing, calling to both sides. She spoke peace without hatred, acknowledging pain in every heart. The surge transformed violent harmonic frequencies into soothing light cascades. Several knights collapsed, overcome by sudden emotional awakening clarity. Even hardened elders paused, struck by memories of lost bonds. The emotional current slowed the battle tide but did not end command intent. The commander resisted dropping weapon as suppressed grief trembled through his eyes. He advanced once more, determined to fulfill institutional duty regardless of pain. The king rose, meeting the blade unflinching, prepared to sacrifice immortality. He opened his chest, metaphorically offering full vulnerability to end the conflict. The commander hesitated, sensing profound, authentic courage devoid of domination. His resolve cracked as ancient indoctrination loosened grip slightly. Within that single fragile hesitation, hidden elders completed destabilization seals. Airship control collapsed, forcing remaining battalions into retreat evacuation. Reinforcement clans pressed forward, reclaiming territory around the clearing. The council's hierarchy fragment visibly retreated, losing public enforcement dominance. The commander finally lowered his blade, expression haunted with doubt. He turned, withdrawing without another word, shedding defeated allegiance. Silence reclaimed the battlefield, broken only by wind through smoldering pine. The altar light softened from violent brilliance into steady, warm glow. The union finalized, locking the king and Alara's bond permanently stabilized. Their energy synchronized, manifesting visible, intertwined light threads around hearts. The king knelt, embracing Alara, trembling with relief and exhaustion. Tears fell unashamed, marking his first emotional freedom since coronation centuries ago. Alara wept too, overwhelmed by love preserved against overwhelming darkness. Surviving vampires bowed, acknowledging new sovereign era emergence. Yet victory remained incomplete, with the council still regrouping beyond borders. Elders warned retaliation campaigns would soon escalate on larger-scale fronts. Bonded clans prepared evacuation support for human border villages near conflict zones. Leadership burdens now expanded beyond solitary rule toward shared guardianship mission. The king and Alara pledged protection of all bonded beings without hierarchy cruelty. They committed to overturning manipulated laws through example, not conquest. Their union would symbolize emotional strength rather than dangerous rebellion. But looming war promised severe trials before peace could fully bloom. As dawn crept beneath fading moons, the bonded pair stood watching the horizon. Hope shimmered, fragile yet real within their synchronized gaze. They understood survival alone was not triumph, but enduring compassion would be. The next chapter would test whether love could truly reshape immortal civilization. Entire life. Bonded king and Alara returned to Nocturne beneath uncertain twilight skies. Whispers followed their arrival as citizens sensed permanent power shift ahead. Their intertwined light stirred awe and fear across immortal communities. Old loyalties trembled, while true unity remained untested by daily governance. The council regrouped in remote strongholds, preparing propaganda against bonded sovereignty. They labeled the pair emotional heretics, threatening ancient civilization balance. Yet villagers sought their protection, fleeing border purges initiated by extremists. Leadership demanded compassion beyond symbolic victory moments. The bonded monarch opened sanctuary gates, welcoming all without judgment or hierarchy. Alara worked tirelessly, healing displaced humans and wounded immortals alike. Their joint presence softened panic, replacing it with cautious, rebuilding spirit. Protection patrols formed from bonded clans, shielding vulnerable migration routes. The council launched final covert assassination assault one moonless night. Elite soul severers infiltrated palace corridors, cloaked from standard detection arrays. Alarms sounded, but emotional resonance alerted the king milliseconds early. The bonded pair stood ready at the grand throne antechamber entrance. The assassins lunged, wielding resonance disruptor blades aimed at Alara first. The king intercepted, absorbing multiple strikes, empowered by amplified immortality resistance. Alara reached into the attacker's channels, unleashing empathy-directed illumination pulses. Their murderous intent collapsed under emotional reflection shock. Combat ended swiftly, with assassins retreating, unwilling to face transparent truth again. The Council's final tactic crumbled without surviving enforcers to sustain myths. Public faith shifted, witnessing bonded compassion triumph without oppressive brutality. Immortal society reevaluated laws rooted in centuries of fear. An assembly of elders convened, dissolving outdated emotional decrees publicly. The bond rite re-entered accepted practice, governed through voluntary devotion ethics. Future leaders would rise through unity contracts, not solitary throne coronation. Love transitioned from forbidden weakness into recognized stabilizing power source. The Vampire King abdicated isolated monarchy, accepting co-rule beside Allura. They established the luminous accord, forging shared governance across clans and humans. Their reign emphasized mutual respect and emotional strength, transparency. Political divisions softened through consistent ethical leadership example. Years passed under gradually healing skies where fog seemed lighter than before. Bonded guardians taught emotional resilience to young immortals and village healers. Alara founded compassion academies, training for conflict mediation and restoration. The former king mentored bonding guardians, emphasizing restraint rather than dominance. Their personal love flourished quietly without spectacle beneath renewed orchards. They walked moonlit paths hand in hand, savoring simple shared conversations. No prophecies guided them anymore beyond intentional kindness decisions each day. Their strength lay not within destiny anymore, but daily chosen unity. One evening, Alara rested against him, watching new sunrise crest ancient towers. She whispered gratitude for finding love within a monster's shadow. He corrected her, gently affirming monsters transform when loved without fear. Together they understood healing had truly replaced warfare as world foundation. The story closed not with endless flames or vanquished enemies. It ended with two hearts beating steadily for all beings seeking belonging. Their example rippled outward, teaching love can conquer immortal darkness quietly. Hope became law, stronger than bloodline power or ancient crown authority.